Hi and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anu, and I welcome you all on behalf of Zebia Academy for today's expert talk by Ananda Roy. He's going to talk about world and AI ML and he's also going to help us delve into deep learning. Before he begins, I think it's a privilege to introduce Ananda. Ananda is a seasoned IT professional with 14 years of work experience spanning across multinational companies. He started as a developer from early in his career and moved to machine learning while the field was very nascent. Without taking much of the time, I think I'm just going to give the floor to Ananda to start his talk. And I'm myself very excited and looking forward to his session. The Q&A session is open, so you may ask the questions and those will be answered by Ananda either during the session or right after the webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Ananda.
Thank you, Anu. Hello. Hello all, and good afternoon, good evening to all of you. So it's a Friday evening and Friday afternoon, and thanks for joining me. So today's agenda is we are going to know what is AI ML and how deep learning is relevant. So I'm just sharing my screen. And for any question answers, we have dedicated some times. But also, if you have any question answer, I would request you type your questions in the window. I may answer that during the sessions, but I would prefer to answer those questions post the sessions. Okay, so I'm just sharing my screen. Okay, hope my screen is visible. Okay, is my screen visible, Anu? Or anyone?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Anu. So these are the agenda for today's sessions. So we are going to learn, or we are going to know about what is machine learning and why data is important in machine learning. Okay. Then, as the session makes sense about why deep learning is relevant today. So let's understand about the deep learning as well. Then, this machine learning, deep learning, as we are going to see that these are all part of artificial intelligence. So we are also going to observe what are the different applications of artificial intelligence. And then it comes when, as a ML practitioner, you are going to solve a machine learning problem. What are the different life cycles from starting to finish that you finally encounter when you approach a machine learning problem? Okay. Then we will see that how we can be an ML practitioner. So just wanted to know about the different background of each of you, so that if required, I could tailor the session accordingly. So anyone knows about machine learning from this group? Okay, so there is hand raised by Badari Prasad. If I know Badari, you're right. So yeah. Please, yeah, Honey, Bansal, Parvit, Makhani. So there are a lot of hand raised. So yeah. So Anu, will they be able to speak during the session?
So maybe what I can do is I can read out the messages that they are saying.
Okay. Okay. So
some of them are mentioning that yes, they are aware.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Some of you are aware. Okay. Just a few mentions you are aware, and mostly do not see the response. Fine. So thanks, Badari. Thanks, Hani. Thanks, Parvit. So basically, so I'm going to also mention about ML, and it may be some additional part what you already are aware of. Okay. So coming to the introduction to machine learning. So as a layman, right, when you see the machine learning, so these are the things. I mean, See, as a layman, when you approach to anyone, as a kid or someone, this thinks that this is a machine learning, this is a robots, right? So the first, there is a movie called Terminator, the second is Ex Machina. So these are the machines in a science fiction movie where they have sensationalized the machine learning and all towards the AI parts. So we think that this is the, the ultimate of AI. So we are yet to reach there, those aspects, but what we have already reached at this. So this is already present. Face recognition. This you could have seen in any one of your smart mobile phones, or the self-driving car, right? So this is also present today. This has already been established. Some companies like Google, Tesla, they have already worked on. So these are the things which just already been realized by machine learning. Now, talking about machine learning, if you want to know the definition, what it is, then we can get to know actually the definition of machine learning and what is the difference of machine learning from the traditional programming, right? So in the traditional programming, I hope some of you are at least, or I would expect that most of you are from a programming background, or at least know how a program operates. So the way the programming operates is that you write a code or a piece of block or a program, and you provide the input. And that piece of block, okay, your program, that operates on your input data, which is also called the parameter or the argument, and produce the result, right? So that is what the traditional programming. Now here, the program or the computation part that you have written beforehand. So it will exactly follow the way you have written the program. So there is no if or else to the output. So there may be a if else during the programming itself, but the way a program is operated, this is all written by you before even the input is sent. So the output is guaranteed, and we know exactly what the output is going to be. If the output is not going to the expected, then the problem is something wrong with the program, and or something the program is not able to handle the input data. Now, the difference between this traditional programming and the machine learning is one major thing. The major part is that in the machine learning, this computation, right? This computation or this the program which we are going to write, this is non-existent. When I say non-existent, it's not like that there is no logic which actually generates the output from input. The way I mean here, or I intend to provide the logic here, is that the program in machine learning we are not writing before. So when you are not writing the program, we actually are not aware of the exact output. Now the question comes, why we are not writing the program for machine learning? Why the computational logic we are not writing? The reason being that the machine learning, it actually the deals with the complex logic. Now, when we are writing a program, we know exactly the logic what we are going to write. Now, we have, say, for example, a machine learning problem. We have around 10,000 inputs, and maybe we are producing around 10,000 output, or maybe the single output, or maybe the more output. So this essentially it can be many to many, it can be many to one, or one to many. The thing here is the logic. We do not have to know the logic to write the program. Then how the program will operate? The way a machine learning operates is we give the program an input and output. So and we are expecting that machine learning computational block is to generate some program, which is also called the model. Now, what is that exactly? So the input part, let's say input part is X. Okay, I'm just going to, I don't have a whiteboard, right? So I'll just take help of a notepad. Okay, just to more understand. Okay, so here you can see that the y, let's consider y as an output, and X is an input, okay, for this piece of logic. Now, we do not know the function, we do not know the y of fx. We want the programs to be generated by the machines. So the logic part is generated by the program itself. So this is the essential difference between traditional programming and the machine learning. In a traditional programming, we are writing the program before even sending the input data. So we know the logic that will generate the output result. In machine learning, what happens is we know the input, we know the desired result. So we send the input and output together. So y and fx. And when we say we are sending input and output, we say number of y and number of x. Say for example, y1 to yn and x1 to xn. If I write here, we are sending say y1, y2 to yn, and it is generated from the input of x1, x2 to xn. Okay. So out of these output and input, if we are sending to the machine learning model, so machine learning program, so it actually gives us the program itself, so which is the function here. Okay, so the logic part is generated by the program itself. So this is what a machine learning can be, which generates the program. Now why we are doing that? Because we are sending the input, we are sending the output, we are generating the model. The reason we are doing that, now say we already have the model. When you say model, in a layman term, in a traditional programming, it is a mapping of y and x. So it is a function. Okay. The next time we got an input, okay, the next time we get an input like say x x something or x something, say we get an input like a1. Okay. Now we can send this input to the same function because we have already got this function generated by our program, right? We send this function to the model and we get the output. We do not have to worry about what is the output will be because we already know the function and that is being generated by the machines. Okay, so this is essentially the difference between traditional programming and the machine learning part. Okay, I hope it is clear so far, and if not, okay, if there are questions, so okay, thanks, Anu.
Sure.
Fine, so we'll move on to the next part, which is the growth of data. Now, why we are talking about data? Now, if you observe the way I have been saying about the machine learning, say we are sending the x1 to xn, right? So those inputs, and we are getting the, and we know the output from y1 to yn, and our objective is good to get the function, to get the model, right? Now, you do understand, I mean, we have to send a lot of input and a lot of output for the machines to get the mapping, to get the model. And this is actually been helped by the growth of data. So when you consider the data, you consider this is just a tiny period. When it's a tiny period, it's not something from the beginning of the the mankind or the beginning of the even Christ century. So that's not the beginning. It's just from 2010. So from 2010, if we consider the data has been generated as 0 zettabyte. Okay. So by 2020, it is almost has touched the 40 zettabyte. And just look at the growth here from 2020, 19 we got around 40 zettabyte. So for 20 we got around 50 zettabyte. So the 10 zettabyte we got in 1 year. The next year we even got more than that. So the data growth, the growth of data, this is quite exponential. And the reason this growth of data is happening is because of if you follow the below slide, right? So the business data, if you consider the data which is being used by the business, that has grown, but not to the much of that contributed to the growth of the data. That has been contributed by the sensor data, right? So sensor data, so you're aware of IoT, right? So IoT, your refrigerators, your washing machine, so maybe RFID, okay? All of these systems, they are sending the output. These are the sensor data, and they are sending the real time. In a manufacturing plant, the sensor data is very much important. They are sending all the real data in a streaming fashion. And if there is any issue of the production, okay, the sensor data actually tells us that's an issue. So the remediation needs to be done at the real time itself. And also the data generated by the human. So what is the data generated by the human? The social network, right? If we log into Facebook or the WhatsApp or the YouTube, the social network, Twitter handle, okay? And also the lot of other ways. For example, when you go to any website, you interact with a chatbot. So there are a lot of ways this the data explosion is happening. And these data explosions, when it's happening, we need to realize this data, realize the business benefit of the data. So how this explosion of data helps us to get more insight from the data itself. One part is that this explosion of data helps us to get the machine learning input. So machine learning input is essentially you need to provide a lot of input and the output data. It requires a lot of data. Now the reason the growth of data is also helping the machine learning, one is the data is abundance nowadays, and the second part is that, which is also very important, is that we got very computational, cheap computation nowadays. So if you remember or if you observe, right, so the correct word. So when I was started my career, so back in 2006, right? So that time I got the memory computer, and where it has the random access memory or the primary RAM, which is a 128 MB, and the hard disk was 40 GB. So that is the computer that time I was quite fascinated. So and today the smartphone you are using, it may have the random access memory which is around 16 GB, right? So and also we currently we have the graphical processing unit. Graphical processing unit provided by the different cloud provider, and even some of the laptops are also providing the graphical processing unit. So these actually helps the processing of a lot of data in a very efficiently, in a timely manner, and it's very, very fast. Okay, and it's also very cheap also. So without this cheap processing power, we could not have realized the business benefit of this vast set of data. So the processing power is the one major important about this machine learning, the evolution of machine learning, importance of machine learning, and the second part is cheap storage. So nowadays you get a the computer or the laptop where you can store. So my present laptop, the laptop from where I've been presenting, it has a 500 GB data. Just imagine with that when I started my career, so around 2006, that has the data at that time I got 40 GB. So now it has around 500 GB. Just think about the explosion. Also nowadays this is a public cloud provider, so they essentially provide this storage very cheap, way, so we can essentially store anything. The reason that the cheap storage is important, this huge set of data, where do we store this data? We have to store the data somewhere, right, to realize to operate on the data. So the cheap processing power and the cheap storage, these are two important parts to realize the business benefit of the data using machine learning. Now, coming to our the session topic, what is deep learning? Now, to understand deep learning, we have to know the way it is being evaluated from artificial intelligence, to machine learning, and from machine learning to deep learning. Now, if you talk about the artificial intelligence, it is the way any living entity, right, or any humans, they behave. Okay, how we can mimic the intelligence or the way the behavioral pattern of any living entity. So that is what an artificial intelligence. So we want basically a machines to operate the way we are thinking. When you say we as a human are thinking, or any living being is thinking. So that is what an artificial intelligence. Now the way the way that can be achieved is using machine learning. So the definition of machine learning we have already covered, that this is a technique by which a machine can learn from the data and without using a complex set of different rules. So it's, we have already covered here. Let's start from logic. So we are not providing the logic, we are providing the data, and the machine learns this complete complex logic using this data itself. So we do not have to write the rules, right? So this is what a definition of machine learning is. Now, what is deep learning? Now, deep learning is again a subfield of machine learning, where it actually is being inspired by the way our brain's neuron functions. So the way our brain operates is using the neurons, right? So these neurons, it has, if someone of you from biology or someone have the interest to know the way the neuron operates, it has a dendrite, it has basically sending, taking the input and sending this input, processing the input and sending the output. Now, it has been observed that deep learning operates on the similar way. So that the working of the deep learning, this is the reason is also called as artificial neural network. So this is what it is, the deep learning basic blocks. So how does that work? You have an input data, okay, and we need to produce some output data. Remember, deep learning is a part of machine learning. So we have an input layer, we have an output layer. And the way this mapping is happening is by a hidden layer. We do not know what is happening in this hidden layer. We are just constructing this hidden layer using some of the weights and bias. So what is weight and bias? If I go to this here, so essentially it is the same y plus fx, but here, if you are considering deep learning, you can also consider y equals to wx plus b, where this w is called the weight and b is called the bias, right? So these weights and bias are there in this hidden layer. So in this equation, this is y is the output when you have this output layer, x is the input layer, and this hidden layer is constructed by this weight and bias. Now, how this weight and bias we get to know? Well, that is the job of deep learning. So initially, we have to, at the start, we have to initialize some values of this w and b. So we initialize those values. We initialize the random values, okay? And once we randomly initialize, so now once the more and more data comes, so those randomly processed data, randomly initialized values of w and b gets evaluated, and they produce the output. Okay, let's say now we have a the value of w1 and b1, which is producing the output y1, right? Now let's say our actual output is y, and what is the output we have is y1. So the difference between this y and y1, that is called error. So this difference, what happens is that the difference is being calculated. So we need to understand why this error is happening, because we have chosen some values of W and B, right? Which supposed to be not correct. So we have to make them correct. How can we do that? We got the error, and now we have to take a derivative of this error and to the back propagations. What is the back propagations? So back propagation is something like, the way this figure is showing, it is the forward propagation. So the input is using the hidden layer and producing the output. Now, using the randomly initialized values of W and B, we got some output. Now we have to ensure that this error is minimized. How can we do that? We take this value of error, and this error we take a derivative of this error with respect to this weights and biases, and we try to minimize this derivative. So if some of you have understanding of calculus, what it means that the partial derivative of, so it's difficult for me to write here, would have been easier for if it's a whiteboard, but it is. So it is the delta of error given by the change of weights, and then similarly it can be done by the delta of error similar to the bias. And then what happens is that we need to minimize that. The way we minimize that, because it's a law of calculus, it will be the delta value, it has to be 0. So we need to minimize that, and that is the way we achieve the correct value of W and B, and which actually produces the less error here. Now, this is the basic block of deep learning, but this, please understand, this is just a shallow network. This is a shallow learning, by the way. It's just not deep. This is just a basic block. If we are considering the what is the actual deep learning, we have to consider this. So this is what an actual deep learning is, when you have a number of hidden layers. Okay, and each of these hidden layers has their own weights and biases. Now, each of these weights and biases, each of this layer is producing the output, or we can say safely that each of these layer is responsible for a specific part. Now, if we are considering deep learning, okay, for a computer vision applications, let's say consider for a face recognition, which is very much popular nowadays, right? So how does face recognition work? So these different layers, hidden layers, each of these hidden layers, okay, are responsible for a specific part. It has been observed, right? It has been observed that the first hidden layer is generally the responsible to detect the edges, and second layer is the combination of edges, and essentially the deep layers, which is the before output layers, or the very deep layers, they are actually responsible for detecting the complex part. So the way it is operating, the object models, the full face, the structure of face, this is being realized deep layer. It's not generally, it's not being realized by the hidden layer. Now this has been observed by the scientists with a lot of methods. So I'm not going to details of that, but this is how the deep learning operates, and we have to just find it out that the hidden layer of a deep neural network, I have shown here just a 3 hidden layer, but it can be more, it can be much more, right? And this again has been realized by this cheap computation power and the fast computation power. Any deep learning network requires a lot of computation power, possibly a graphical processing, right? Now, this was not possible when we didn't have much computational power. There is some videos of an eminent scientist, and they actually confirm that the reason AI and ML has achieved this groundbreaking achievement in last 5 years or the 10 years is because of the sheer potential of the computation power. So that is the reason we are able to execute a deep learning framework, right? So which was just not possible before. So this is the reason a deep learning is called deep. Now, okay, is there any questions, Anu, so far?
No.
Okay. So I'll just proceed then. Fine. So these are the we have covered what is a deep learning. Now, the different industrial applications of AI. So we nowadays in our daily life we have seen these different applications. Self-driving car, it's not realized in India, but it's already been realized by US and developed nations, companies like Google and Tesla. They have already realized. So I have also shown here the way this self-driving operates is, it tries to find. We have a framework before the camera, the car itself. So essentially, there has to be a camera. So it takes the images of what is there in front, okay, and then using the deep learning framework this car has, it is able to identify what is a cycle, what is a car, what is the way it is moving. If you observe, this cycle is moving from perpendicularly, whereas the cars are moving, the parallel or the similar way. These, movement, okay, it is very easy for us to understand, for us human to understand, but it's not so easy for a machine to understand and the way it has to operate. So that has been realized using a self-driving car. Okay, and just imagine a self-driving car is coming and hitting a pedestrian. It does not happen because why this does not happen? Because the framework has been realized after iterating a number of results. So essentially it again boils down to this y1 and x1. So it got a number of input and it has produced this output. And if the output is not meant to input, not according to the way we are thinking. For example, we have projected a dummy pedestrian, and we have asked the self-driving car to run. And if we observe that it is about to hit the pedestrian, the dummy pedestrian, but that the model is not working perfectly. We have to tune it. We have to finalize it. So before running to the production, when it's a production, it has been left to operate on the empty road. Okay, where any person is moving, the person does not know, right? There is a self-driving car or some human is driving the car, right? So the car's model, it has to be top-notch so that it does not hit a person. Okay, but having said everything, mishap, accident is bound to happen. But again, those are the accidents. It's not a normal case. But again, a lot of things have been considered, before before the self-driving car is even allowed to operate on the road. And the second application is face recognition, which is very much prevalent, right? In your smartphone or everywhere, you have this face recognitions. Even some of the companies, have your face recognized, and then it allows you to enter the premise. The way it operates, even I have worked on a face recognition applications some years back. So there are complexity, but let me tell you very simply. Okay, it essentially, the way it operates, it essentially tries to find the difference between the eyes, between the different parts of the nose and the lips, and so it's not a single difference. It tries to find this distance, right? So this distance for your faces, there are 128, 130. These are the differences they try to find, and it gets those differences, okay, and it stores in its own database. Now the next time another person comes, okay, it is very rare, or it is just not possible that all the differences of your face will be exactly matched to the other person, unless in a Mission Impossible movie. That's again a science fiction movie where your face is getting exactly the way, and that is the way the person is entered. But again, when you say that the evolution of science, that is again the retina scan is becoming apparent, becoming working here, so that even if your face getting recognized, but you are not able to open the door. But again, now the sophistication level of face recognition is like that you cannot produce your photo and ask expect the machines to recognize your face. It does not work. It wants your movable photo. So your eyes need to blink, or there has to be some movable part so that it needs to recognize your face. That is the sophistication part, and that is the reason we are able to stop the faking of the face recognitions. So this is one of the applications of AI. Other application is product recommendations. If you go to a shopping website, for example, the most prominent example is Amazon. Okay, and if say you have chosen some products in Amazon, right? But you have not bought that product. What happens is that your data is getting captured, and the recommendation pattern is even if you are not buying that, the next time you again visit the Amazon, it either provides you the same the same products, or it essentially provides you the similar products, which it knows what you are liking, what you have chosen for, and so it offers you the similar product. The sole purpose of this product recommendation is to ensure that you buy something. Okay, you buy something from the product. So when you buy that product, okay, now here the way this machine learning operates, once you buy that, okay, it got some positive feedback. So it understands this algorithm is working correctly, this model is working correctly. So it against working on the similar things. If you do not buy, or when you say you, there may be 100 or thousands of you, okay, who are not buying but just observing. Even if after recommending 1,000 of products, then the way the model operates, it tweaks itself, okay, so that it provides you a different the products, a different patterns, so that it tries that whether you are interested in that. Once you buy that, it gets a positive feedback. It shows you the similar. Okay, that's the product recommendation. It is available mostly the shopping website, e-commerce website. You get in Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, all the major shopping websites, right? You get this product recommendation is very much apparent. Also, the commute estimations. The commute estimations is any map, right? So most of you have been using the Google Map, right? The way this Google Map works, it's by default it shows you not the shortest distance. By default, it shows you the distance where you can reach in the shortest amount of time. And if you observe, right, say when you are coming, from office to your home, or on a Monday morning you are starting from office, that's commute estimation. It gets very, it gets very dynamic. So 8 o'clock, the estimation was there. 9 o'clock, it gets changed. 10 o'clock, it gets completely changed, because more and more vehicles are coming, and it already knows that what will be the density of the vehicle. It also understands this destination, understand the number of density of the vehicles, and based on that, it estimates you in such a way so that you can reach at the shortest possible way. That's the way it recommends you a product. So commute estimation is one of the application of AI. Fraud detections. Fraud detection, it is again prevalent mostly in banking. For example, a credit card fraud detections, and it works on the streaming data. For example, so if you are working on your using your credit card, right? So you are swiping your credit card, and the swiping machine, it got your information. Now there are some malcreants who misuse persons who does that. they take your information of the credit card, and it tries to do the same swiping of your credit card. Once that happens, you get a notification if your notification is enabled in your phone. Okay, but sometimes, and I'll tell you honestly, in international transaction, you do not get a swiping this information. It cannot be enabled in international transactions. But the banking company, it has to stop the credit fraud, right? So what happens is that it tries to understand that you are in a place like Bangalore and your card is being swiped in a United States, or maybe the Latin America. So it essentially finds out that that's not the usual things. So what I have observed, and the way the banking operates, it raises a flag. When it raises a flag, you get a call from your the customer care of the bank, and to your registered mobile number, and to confirm that whether you are doing the transactions. Okay, how do they operate? How do they detect that this can be fraudulent detections? Because whenever you are swiping, right, your location information is getting captured, right? Location informations, also your phone informations, those are getting captured. Now, your card is being swiped at a place where you are not present, right? In that case, what is happening? So there is a mismatch. So a machine learning model is there, okay, which is got the input of a lot of things, and your present positions, your location is one of them. Now, when this location is altered, so it finds out that there is something which is not correct, which is not the way it's supposed to be. That's why it raises the flag, and that is how the fraud detection occurs. And basically, it's credit card fraud. Okay, so these are the different industrial applications of AI, but this is not, again, not the all. There can be a lot more. Chatbot, you go to a website, a different website, for example, a real estate website or website, which is, you want to achieve something, you want to buy something, maybe some educational website where you want to learn something, and there's a pop-up, the chatbot happens, it tries to get, interact with you. It asks you information, your name, maybe your phone number, and then you ask that what are the different options available, what are the different things which you are interested, and it provides you certain options so that you can choose what out of this one of these options, right? So that's the way the chatbot operates. It's not a human which is sitting, the other side of the computer. It's basically a machine learning model. It's a chatbot which has been trained using millions of input with millions of output. It knows exactly what are the possible inputs can happen. So it recognizes the similar input, and it responds accordingly. So that is a way a chatbot operates. So that this is one of the another industrial applications of AI. By the way, out of these applications, face recognitions, chatbot, product recommendations, these can be achieved even you have the machine learning experience by some good machine learning experience. So for example, 1 or 2 years. Okay, even the fraud detection, that is also possible. Self-driving car, it is something complex. Okay, and the commute estimation, of course, you have to know the mapping pattern. But otherwise, these are not as difficult as it sounds, or not as magical as it sounds to be. Okay, this can be achieved. I mean, you can also develop that if you learn machine learning after and become a practitioner after 1 or 2 years. That is the reason I said that I have also built a face recognition applications some time back. Now, if you consider the machine learning lifecycle, right? So this is how till this these are the industrial application. Now, for example, you have become a machine learning practitioner, right? So and you have got a problem. Now, how do you operate on this problem? Okay, so you put on your machine learning hat, right, and tries to find out why. I mean, how do you operate on this data? How this problem can be realized as a machine learning problem. So the first thing is that you got an input data. But before getting input data also, you have to understand that why this particular problem we can be solved as a machine learning. Okay, this is very important. I would say the most important is to understand the business objective. So guys, please try to understand the machine learning is not magic. It's just not a black box. You give some input and it produces the output. It's just not possible that way. You have to realize, or you have to finalize, you have to decide whether a particular problem is worthy of a machine learning. How you can realize that? Just follow my first slide, or this, the initial slides. This is the computation part. Okay, we have to realize, are these computation complex enough? Okay, so for example, you get a data, right? If you put a if else block, right? If something happens, then it will produce X. If nothing happens, it will produce a Y. If there is a simple logic you can write in your code, believe me, traditional programming is much better choice than machine learning. You should not be using machine learning in that case. You will be using a traditional programming. But you get a complex logic, right? You get 1,000 and 1,000 inputs and get a lot of output, and those input and output does not happen, follow a particular pattern, right? So if you do not get that particular pattern, how do you write the logic? Then you have to resort to this, the machine learning. So that is the reason understanding the business objective is very important. That's why you have to find out as an ML practitioner, right? Why a particular problem can be solved using machine learning and not using a traditional computer. Okay. So once you get this understanding, okay. So what happens is that you get an input data. You have now finalized that this is a problem we need to resolve using machine learning. Now, machine learning, okay, to work on a machine learning problem, you need a lot of data. Right? Without data, there is no way machine learning can operate. So you get data, but it's not like that. The data you get, that data will be, worthy of the machine learning algorithm itself. You cannot just get a raw data, okay, and send it to algorithm, and you expect the model, will be generated. It does not happen like that. So there is a very important step which is called the feature engineering. And believe me, guys, as an ML engineer, we have to spend around our 65 to 70% of time, in these first two blocks, which is the input data and feature engineering. The data we get as a raw format, right? We cannot apply the ML algorithm here. We have to do the proper feature engineering. So what is a feature engineering? So for example, when we have a natural learning, processing, so NLP problem, you get a lot of abstract text. You need to find the sentiment. So for example, you get a Twitter text or a social media text, and you need to find the sentiment. To get the sentiment, you have to choose the correct word, and you have to discard the words which are not relevant. For example, if you consider our English language, you have the, a, or, which are the the mostly prevalent words which are not being used. Okay, I mean, when it's not being used, which are not important when you are developing this model. So these stop words, you call this as a stop word, which you need to get rid of. So this is just one example. There are number of examples or number of ways we need to process this raw data to a the processed data, the transformed data. When you get that transformed data, on this transformed data, we can apply this ML algorithms. So there can be a number of ML algorithms. Okay, there are traditional ML algorithms. There can be deep learning as well, and because I said that deep learning is part of ML itself. And when we apply this ML algorithm on the transformed data, we get that ML model. That is not all to everything. We get an ML model, but we need to now evaluate. Why? How we need to evaluate? If you remember, guys, this is the error part. This y minus y1. This error has to be minimized. So that is one of the major evaluation criteria. So this is a big thing. I'm telling you a very, very simplistic way. This evaluation criteria has to be met for this model to operate. Okay, if it does not work, if it's no, then what happens is that we have to reiterate the feature engineering, apply algorithm, and evaluate algorithm. So there is an arrow has to be there from this no to feature engineering part. Okay. if it's the evaluation criteria is not met. If it's met, then what happens is that we have to present this data as a visualized way. When you say visualized, so you have a business stakeholders, right? Business stakeholders can be called as a product owner. You need to show how your model is behaving, and the way you need to present it using a different graph chart. Okay, that makes your data a lot more presentable. Okay, so that is a way you need to visualize. So these are the different machine learning life cycle. Now, I have I have not used a key block here, which is the deploying a machine learning. So now, to be a ML practitioner, you need to, now these are the different life cycles. Now to be a ML practitioner, you need to follow these steps. So firstly, as we have mentioned, that you need to find out how a particular problem is relevant for machine learning and not for traditional programming. Then what you need to know is that you need to know different ML and DL algorithms. If you do not know the way an algorithm operates, okay, how will you use that? You have to know these algorithms, right? Then you need to know this different ML framework, right? So where is all the algorithms are already provided, this inbuilt. So this is the same way when you use a Java programming language and you have a lot of libraries, right? So you just use this library. In that way, you can just use this ML algorithm, but you have to know the way the algorithm operates in order to be efficiently use this algorithms. Okay, so different frameworks are like scikit-learn, TensorFlow, PyTorch. Okay, and to use the above framework, you need to learn some programming language. The most prevalent programming language is Python, but R is also picking up. So these are the two major programming language. And once you get know all of this, and you have used your a ML algorithm on your data, you get a ML machine learning model. You got a machine learning model. You have developed a machine learning model. Now you need to deploy this machine learning model in a suitable environment. Now there are a lot of public cloud provider, and you need to deploy in a computer also. It has to be the computationally very much performant, so that once you deploy this model, then only you realize the business benefits. The way you realize the business benefit is that you send an input, and it is able to produce the output the way it's expected to be. Okay, so that is how you realize the business benefit. So guys, this the last part, the deploying of machine learning, is also very, very important. So these are the ways you can be an ML practitioners. And even if you are starting from something scratch, and even if you do not have much understanding of how these things operates, right? So even if you do not know about Python and R, so if you follow these steps, step by steps, okay, then it is easy and it is possible for you to be an ML practitioner. And the reason I can say that, because I was also in your positions, around 8 years back. So I also started from a traditional programming background, but I have learned all this, okay, in an iterative way. And now, I have become, the ML engineer, and I have, mastered all these. So that's the way it comes from experience, guys. So these are the things, if you follow that, you will be able to be an ML practitioner. So that's about my last slide. So I would expect some questions and answers at this point. So Anu, is there any questions? I can see there. Yeah.
A few questions. Yeah.
So from your experience, usually how many times of a negative behavior? Okay. What are the first questions? Usually how many times of a negative behavior will lead to alterations of a predicted output? So a question from Shubhashish. Thanks Shubhashish. There are a number of questions from Shubhashish. Okay, thank you for asking the questions. So it happens, see, again, when you say negative behavior, okay, when you say negative behavior, I suppose it is the difference of the output pattern. So when you are expecting is Y, but we got a predicted as Y1. So it is a part of our machine learning process itself. Right? So this, the reason I said that this is an iterative process. Okay, I need to do this is a thing. If I follow that, yeah. So this is an iterative process. So when you say evaluation criteria is met, this is exactly to mention that the difference between your predicted output and the actual output. If this is more, then your evaluation criteria is not met. It's no. Then you follow the same feature engineering. You follow the same, apply again machine learning algorithm, maybe some different ML algorithms, and you again evaluate the ML model. So this is an iterative process. So when you, the question is, when you have, how many times, okay, so this is a part of our questions. This is a part of a process itself. Okay, so you get a difference of the output, and that actually leads you to tune your model accordingly. Ultimately, you get a good model when your evaluation criteria is met, and you do not have to do the iteration anymore. Okay, so that is my first question. That is my first response from your questions. How to decide which AI model would be ideal for specific use case? Okay, again, a very, very good question. So again, for that, Shubhashish, you need to know, first, when you say specific use cases, I will mention that we have to understand the different ML algorithms. So there are algorithms like classifications, there are algorithms like regressions. Okay, so for example, when you say face recognition, it happens, either it is you or it is no. So it's a classification problem. Again, regression. So for example, I stay at Bangalore. So I'm at my particular place. If I have to calculate, to predict the housing price of my particular place. So that's a regression problem. So in that case, I have to choose a regression algorithm. But in a face recognition, I have to choose a face recognition classifications algorithms. So this is, again, you have to know different types of AI algorithms to actually decide on which AI model. It's when you say AI model, it will be different AI algorithms. So that is the way you can decide that which algorithm is ideal for a specific use case. So that is the second response. Shubhashish, again, if there is a need for millions of records needed to train an algorithm, which is a chatbot, isn't it similar to maintaining a database of with millions of records of possible input and desired output, and write a function which will simply give the desired output? How ML model give me an advantage in this scenario? Can you please explain a bit? If there is a need for millions of records needed to train an algorithm, okay, isn't it? Okay. Okay, in database is you have a million of record and possible input and desired output. So tell me, Shubhashish, a database, you're not writing any function in a database, right? So for function, you have to write it function in a logical way, right? You can write a function which will give you a desired output. But in that case, which is more important, you need to write these functions which will give you the desired output. So you have a millions of record input, you need to write the output, write the function by yourself, which will give you the desired output. But ML model, what is an ML model is doing? You do not have to write this function. You ask the systems to produce the function for you. So that is the difference. That is the major difference. You are not writing the functions. So when you have a million and million of records and these are producing again the similar number of output and different output, you do not have to know the logic, the way this input is mapping to output. This ML model, if you give the exact data and you use an algorithm, it will produce the ML model. When I say it will produce the ML model, it will write this function for you. You do not have to write the function. In a traditional programming, you have to write the function yourself. But in a machine learning concept, this function has been written, has been generated by the systems to you. So that is the major advantage. I hope this answer is clear. And this next question is from Saroj Shahu. We talked about loads of data, how to and at what stage and what level the redundant or duplicate data is got rid of. Okay, very good question, sir. So the redundant or duplicate data is got rid of. There's a feature engineering part. When you say redundant, right? So for example, there are some concept called outlier of the data. What is an outlier of the data? Say for example, you are considering an income of not say income, yeah. Income may be for a certain age group, say for 20 to 30. So all of you are having income of, say for example, say 50K to 70K, or maybe someone has 200K, okay, 50K to 200K. Now, if you get an erroneous data and you get that someone has been the income of say 20,000 K, right, or 25,000 K, so that data is erroneous. We have to find out a lot of more information of the data. So there may be one or two cases where the outlier can happen, right? So one data can be very much different than the rest of the data, but we have to find out the sanctity of the data. Ultimately, again, guys, this is an important question, and this is an important thing to know, that machine learning is all about getting the data and producing the output. And there is a famous concept as garbage in and garbage out. If you are sending the data which is not good enough, okay, you do not expect your machine learning model to be efficient enough, right? So you have to be very, very careful about this data. So the question of Saroj is how to and what stage. So Saroj, this is a feature engineering stage. Feature engineering, and before the feature engineering, I have, again, it's a simplistic view. We have to do the the data analysis. At the data analysis stage, we actually get rid of the redundant, also the duplicate data. Again, Shubhashish, my question one was more about a false positive perspective. Okay, false positive. Okay. First question, what is the first question? Usually how many times? Okay. So the false positive, more from a false positive perspective when the model is deployed. Okay. Again, this false positive, false negative, I'm not going to detail, but these are different parts of a evaluation criteria. What is a false positive, by the way? False positive is you are targeting something. So one of the evaluation criteria is accuracy, right? But this accuracy is not the great evaluation criteria. So other evaluation criteria is a false positive. False positive is the precision. So please check my first question also about feature engineering block. Okay, first, okay. First, let me, my question, okay. False positive is finding about the precision, okay. So some of these cases, the precision is more required evaluation criteria compared to the accuracy. In that case, this false positive is important. Again, recall, right? So in a recall case, I'll give you a simple scenario. What happens is that in a COVID case, right? So now this COVID is very much prevalent, right? So for example, there are 1,000 patients. Out of this 1,000 patients, say 10 persons got COVID. So if you see the percentage, it is out of this 1%, out of 100% who got infected. So if you say the accuracy is 99%, which is not, but accuracy is not a good evaluation criteria. We have to choose the recall. So that is the reason we have to choose the way the model is about to behave. So the false positive, precisions, recalls, these are some of the evaluation criteria. And yeah, so the first, okay, second question. Saroj, please check my first questions also about feature engineering block. What is the feature engineering block? Okay, is the feature engineering block achieved by ML coding or outside of coding block or the tools of software engineering? So Saroj, so the feature engineering block, it's more towards the data engineering. Okay, so if you consider ML engineering, ML coding, so it is, see, you can take ML coding as a part of data engineering. Okay, so the ML, but data engineering is essentially has to follow, which generates your raw data from raw data to processed data. And the processed data, you need to apply this ML algorithms. So, right. So, fine, got it. Saroj questions. Okay. So thanks, Saroj. Okay. So the answer to your question is that in the feature engineering block, it is basically data engineering, and it is basically applying this machine learning algorithm. Okay, guys. So these are all the questions, and thanks for asking the questions. And I hope the session has been useful. Now, I think over to you, Anamika.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, Ananda, for the session. I hope I'm audible and clear.
Yes, Anamika, you are audible.
Yes, so thank you everyone for joining us. I hope Ananda's insightful session must have given us a clear understanding on the topics of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and deep learning. Post our session, obviously there will be a Q&A session as well. Until now, most of your questions have been answered, like all of them have been answered. But after this, you can also ask if any of your questions are left. Apart from it, I wanted to tell you that keeping in mind all the skills which are highly in demand in the industry, Zebia has designed a course which makes you an expert in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and AI. So I'll just quickly show you a slide because we start with a batch on 24th of April. So if you are interested in it, do join us. I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we start with the batch from 24th of April.
Could you make it full screen, please?
Yeah, just a second. I'm also getting a call here. Apart from that, kindly just go through the details present here. I'll also paste it on the chat. And apart from it, 24th of April, we'll start this batch, and Saturday, Sunday, we'll be conducting it. Timings would be 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So I will share my details on the chat portal. You can get in touch with me for discussing more about the course details. And rest over to Ananda again if there are any Q&A left, or Anu can take it ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Namika. So, guys, if there are any more Q&A, definitely I would welcome that. But I hope that it's already been, responded. So
Yeah, I think most of the questions are already answered. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Ananda, for taking out time to actually talk about the basics of AI ML. I think that just laid certain kind of foundation for everybody to maybe, research more and delve further into it and see for themselves that they really want to pursue it as well. So thanks a lot, everybody, for joining in. And thank you, Ananda. I'm extremely happy to also end this session on a good note on behalf of Zebia Academy. And I thank you all for being present here. Thank you so much. Also, it would be great if you can also fill in a survey. This is just to sort of gauge feedback on how the session was. If you could just take out 2 minutes to fill the survey, we are going to put it in the chat box and we're going to put it in your mail so that you can just fill the survey and we can get to know how we can move ahead and how we can do better in the same as well. So the survey has been put in the chat box. So if you could just spare 2 minutes and fill in the survey, and thank you. Have a good day. Stay safe. Thank you.
And just to mention, Saroj, I have responded to your questions here in the chat room also. So I think that's it from my end as well. So thanks to everyone for joining the sessions, and wish you again a good afternoon.